Welcome back to the Doc Talk podcast. I'm Dr. Shazma and an ER doctor in Edmonton.
And I'm Dr. Sheila Wijayasinghe, a family doctor in Toronto. So obviously, Shaz, in our line of work, you kind of live in your scrubs. And if you follow us on Instagram, you probably already know this by now, but we are obsessed with figs. They're super comfortable, breathable, durable, and they actually fit, which is just such a huge upgrade from the horrible itchy scrubs that were the status quo for so long. They're also just super cute and stylish, and you feel good wearing them, you know?
Absolutely. Like Sheila said, we are obsessed. But you know what I love the most about figs? They just get what it's like to work in this field. It's not just that they know what we need, like 7 pockets just to carry all my stuff around on shift, but they've also built this incredibly supportive community of people who want to have important discussions and make real connections with other people who work in healthcare. I've been to a couple of their events that they've done, and it's so refreshing for a brand to show up in such a real way. And you guys, if you're not already following them on social media, the memes are hilarious. If you work in healthcare or know someone who does, Figs is it. And right now, if you go to wearfigs.com and use code FIGSCA, that's FIGSCA, you can get 20% off your first order. That's wearfigs.com, code FIGSCA.
And today we're diving into something that I think is really interesting, Shaz, that comes up throughout the year. You know, it's alcohol use. And this is something that we often do. It's part of our routine, whether it's with holiday gatherings or family parties or birthday parties. But you know, there's new Canadian guidelines and more evidence about the risks. And it's time to look at what alcohol really means for our health.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as you said, this is really something as millennials ourselves as well. It's like ubiquitous in as we kind of the way that we move through the world. So we'll walk through the updated guidance, what the evidence says, how it shows up in our patients' lives, and of course our own, and some strategies for making informed choices without judgment. But as always, let's start with our listener question. Today, we actually hear from our producer, Drew.
Hey, Shaz
Hi,
and Sheila.
Drew.
How's
Hi.
it going?
Good.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
I love when you get to come on our show.
I know. I also
love
think
joining
Shaz
you.
said millennial, and I'm a Gen X. I don't know about you,
Oops.
Drew, but
I'm
that's okay.
1983, so I'm borderline.
Oh, you're borderline.
Okay.
Okay, you are millennial. Okay.
So I've been hearing a lot about changes to the safe amount of alcohol that like a person can drink, safely consume. And so I'm wondering if you guys could break that down for me. Like what is fact and what is fiction?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's
Thank
dig
you.
into it. I love
Let's do it. You know, this is such a question that comes up. Thank you, Drew. This is a question that comes up all the time in my practice because I bring it up with my patients. You know, the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction recently released guidelines in 2023, and really in particular focusing on safe drinking levels and what this means for our health. And so the big question that I get is like, is it just really 2 drinks a week? Because that is what the guidelines suggest, that we should be drinking less than 2 drinks a week.
So I have to admit, like that is the same question that I get, not from my patients though, but from in my social circles, because this is something that like you've talked about on your social media channels. You recently had an article in the Globe and Mail, like your editorial piece on this as well, which we'll talk about. I've had content on my social media platforms kind of informing the public and my circles about this new updated guidance. But that is the big question that I get as well. And so it's really what people have latched onto, like, is it really just 2 drinks a week? But the guidance doesn't really actually give a particular safe limit. It just kind of talks about the risk and the increase in risk as you drink beyond, like as you go more than 2 drinks a week. It kind of falls on this, I like to see it as a spectrum. So beyond that, the more you drink, the higher risk is. So can you kind of break down what the guidance says in terms of the amounts that you can drink and what the risk is associated with that?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Shaz. You know, it's not that there's specific numbers that we're aiming to get to. It's really a continuum of risk that they've described. So 1 to 2 drinks a week is considered to be low risk. 3 to 6 drinks a week is considered moderate risk. And 7 or more drinks a week is a higher risk. And this is very different than what was previously taught to us, where we would say less than 7 drinks a week for women was okay and less than 14 for men. And so this is a very different shift in looking at the risk continuum and helping our patients understand and the public understand that it's really like the more you drink, like you said, the higher the risk is for your health.
And yeah, the thing that stood out for me with this guidance is that these risks go well beyond the liver. And this guidance in particular is focused very much on the cancer risk associated with alcohol. And so alcohol is now classified by the WHO as a group 1 carcinogen, which is actually the same category as tobacco and asbestos. And it's linked to at least 7 different cancers. And, you know, Sheila, you mentioned that those old numbers of 7 drinks a week, or on average 1 drink a week for females, and for 2 drinks a day on average or 14 drinks a week for males. And this is like that kind of, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, that really was focused on like heart health and heart disease and stroke, and really not talking about what the other risks are in terms of cancer risks. And so many people don't really realize that not only does alcohol contribute to liver disease, heart disease, and stroke at typically a bit like higher amounts, but even as low as 2 drinks a week is what really brings your cancer risk up. And that's what this guidance really focused on. And so even like moderate amounts of alcohol can have a significant impact on the heart as well. So it can increase your blood pressure. It can increase your risk of irregular heart rhythms like atrial fibrillation. And research shows that having even just 3 or more drinks per week increases your risk of heart disease by about 15%. And drinking 7 or more increases the risk of stroke substantially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important distinction. I think when we think about alcohol use, we worry mostly about the liver, but that cancer risk and the heart and stroke disease risk is incredibly important to address, which is why these guidelines came out. And so when we look at the population level as well, Shaz, we see the impact of alcohol use. It's huge. You see this in the Emerge. I see it in my family practice, but on the societal level, in Canada, alcohol is linked to more than 7,000 deaths and 100,000 hospital stays every year. So it's not just about cancer and liver disease. It also is about heart disease, injuries, and mental health harms that alcohol can contribute to.
And I think that's why it's such a good point, because I see all aspects of alcohol use disorder, both acutely and chronically, in the Emerge. So that big spectrum that you just kind of laid out there. And I think that's why this updated guidance is such a big shift. It's not really about telling people what to do. It's about making sure that they are well informed. And I mean, that's why you and I do this podcast, right? Is to inform people with all the information, accurate information, and they can take that in, weigh it, and decide what is best for them, the risk benefit, and can make informed choices. And so just like we've updated our understanding of things like secondhand smoke or ultra processed foods and processed meats, we're now facing the reality that alcohol actually does carry health risks beyond what we already knew. And there is risk at every level of consumption. So I think it's important for our listeners to have a sense of what that actually means in our day-to-day life. So for many, cutting down to 1 to 2 drinks a week feels like a big change. What do you tell your patients, Sheila, in these situations?
Yeah. So this is a big conversation I have. I was in clinic this morning. I talked about alcohol use 3 times this morning because it became something where some of my patients were drinking more than they wanted to. And I really want to address it in a way for our listeners to understand that this is not a moral issue that we're talking about. This is a health issue. So there's no judgment here. Alcohol use and the reasons we use alcohol are many. And so it's important to also know that this isn't about judgment. It's to get you that support to understand how do we meet your goals in life and your health goals. So I remind my patients always that this isn't an all or nothing kind of situation. The guidance that is given is around that continuum of risk. So if you normally have 7 drinks a week and you reduce that number to about 3 or 4 drinks a week, you've lowered your risk. If you have 10 drinks a week and you go to 8 drinks a week, you are lowering your risk if you go from 3 to 1. So any reduction will lower your risk. And often people will notice that the benefits come pretty quickly. You'll have better sleep, more energy, less brain fog.
Yeah, and so like that one resonates for me because as 2 women in kind of in their 40s, we've talked about perimenopause before, and I certainly have seen this in my friend circles and myself personally. Like alcohol really feels like it hits harder now, and so even with 1 glass of wine, my sleep is completely different. So I have a sleep tracker that I look at. I can see that my sleeping heart rate is different. The restfulness of my sleep, I feel worse in the morning. I can feel like I feel like I'm tossing and turning. So there's like an impact on sleep disruption, on mood and fatigue, and alcohol. Like those existing symptoms within perimenopause, alcohol can just amplify all of that.
100%. Whenever I'm talking to my patients, we try to talk about what are the small steps that you can take to try to reduce alcohol in your life. Again, we're not going all or nothing. What are some ways that we can do that? And one practical tip is to look at the alcohol-free alternatives that are out there. It's actually incredible that there are so many options available. The market for non-alcoholic beers, wines, and more complex mocktails has exploded. And so it's not just like that soda, water, and lime, but soda and water and lime's fine too. And that might give you that thirst quench that you need, that sometimes when we're reaching for alcohol as well. And many are really beautifully crafted to mimic the flavor, mouthfeel, and ritual of drinking that can make cutting back easier. The goal is that we want to make this an easier process process for you. So how do we do that? And, one of the challenges that my patients often tell me, Shaz, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, they tell me that they feel excluded, like in social settings, if they're not drinking. So these options give them an opportunity to still feel included in social settings without the downside of alcohol.
Yeah, and so that one resonates with me as well. So I don't drink a lot to begin with, to be honest. Like there are weeks that I go through where I don't drink anything. And then typically it's in a social setting. I don't drink at home. My husband doesn't drink at home either. But a couple summers ago, right around the time when this guidance came out, I decided to see what it would be like to just not drink alcohol at all for a month. And it actually really opened my eyes to, like you said, the breadth of alcohol-free alternatives that are out there. So I was able to find like really good non-alcoholic cocktails, some non-alcoholic wines, non-alcoholic beers as well that actually like taste very similar to alcoholic cocktails. But then the really neat thing has also been that when I go out to restaurants now or bars, there are very complex, well-constructed non-alcoholic cocktails that bartenders can construct now. So it's not just, a super sugary drink that doesn't have alcohol in it. Like they are well-balanced cocktails that are very much targeting this NA market. And then the other thing that I've really realized from just being more mindful and aware is that now I always keep NA cocktails at home or NA options at home. So, our beverage area has NA beers, NA kind of cocktails. In our liquor cabinet, it has liquor, but it also has different combinations of NA spirits as well, so that we can offer people who come to our house to socialize options that are non-alcoholic as well. And actually, I usually offer the non-alcoholic thing first before I offer someone alcohol, so that it kind of almost takes the pressure off to, you open a bottle of wine and you just like say, hey, do you want a drink? And the wine is just in your hand. The first thing I actually offer is the NA option first, so that it takes the pressure off and hopefully normalizes it as well.
Yeah, I think the normalization is happening really nicely everywhere. And we see that because it is so available. And so that helps also the pressure that people often will feel in that situation, the social situations, to connect, because alcohol can be like this natural lubricant for people to connect and chat. But now we have these other options.
Absolutely. So let's get into some strategies and myths and start by talking about some myths. So one I often hear is alcohol helps me sleep. What are your thoughts on that, Sheila?
Yeah, so this is a big one. So it might help you fall asleep faster, but it actually disrupts your restorative deep sleep. And so often people feel groggy in the morning, they wake up throughout the night. Even if they feel like they've slept through the night, they just don't feel great because you're not getting into that deep restorative sleep pattern if you've had a glass of alcohol or had some alcohol to drink on the night before. And so that's a really big myth, that alcohol actually does not help you sleep better.
Yeah, and certainly something, as I mentioned, like something that I myself have experienced too. Okay, another one. I only drink on weekends, so it doesn't matter. But, of course, binge patterns carry their own risks. So accidents, injuries, high blood pressure spikes. And so it's not just so... There are actually situations where binge drinking can actually be worse than having, more consistent alcohol throughout the week because of these things. So when I'm in the emerge, people are on my favorite thing, those e-scooters that I just love so much. But there's often alcohol that's associated with that, and then can, impair you and cause your risk of injury to be higher. Falls as well. So people who are in their homes who are binge drinking on the weekends, they can have falls and have severe head injuries from this. What's called quote unquote holiday heart, but it's not just about the holidays. So it's basically when you have alcohol binges or an acute increase in the amount of alcohol that you're drinking, and it can precipitate what's called atrial fibrillation or an irregular heart rhythm. And alcohol is a very well-known trigger for that. So those are kind of three common reasons with acute binges of alcohol that I end up seeing present in the ER.
Oh, that's so interesting. And this is, why when the binge pattern happens or even continuous use, it's important to think about small practical steps that you can take and strategies to take that can help you if you're worried about the pressure to drink or you're not sure how to manage it all the time. And your goal is to reduce. And so a few things I go through with my patients all the time, and even with my friends and my loved ones, is, set a drink limit before you go out. So if you're planning ahead and I want to stick to 2 drinks tonight, stick to that, and then alternate with other things, right? Like alternate with water. So have 1 drink of alcohol, 1 sip of water, and then you can have your second drink. But setting that limit ahead of time really helps you prepare, and you have that. And maybe even telling people that you're with this is what I'm going to have tonight because I don't want to feel pressure to have more if you're with friends. And then hopefully that takes off some of that pressure.
Mhm.
But setting that limit ahead of time and then alternating with water is a really great tool, or soda water so you get that spritz. That's a great option. Choosing alcohol-free days is very helpful. So if you tend to drink most of the days of the week, and I have many patients who are like, Dr. Sheila, I have a glass of wine every night with my dinner, and like I need that. That's just been my habit. I'm like, well, is there a possibility that maybe you do that on some nights but not all nights?
Mhm.
And so maybe it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday that you have your glass of wine, or just on the weekends, or just on whenever. What's your most like day that you need to have that and feel like you need that little bit of relaxation? Choose those days and then go alcohol-free on those other days. And then like we talked about just now, Shaz, there's so many great alcohol-free options available. So try alcohol-free options. There's so many out there and they're great, and they're becoming like very priced appropriately. So they're not out of reach for us as well. And
Mhm.
always be mindful of portions. This is a big one, right? Like I don't think we all know exactly what a standard glass of wine is. And people will often joke and be like, is that like a real pour or is that a standard drink pour?
Yeah. Mhm.
And, I think we get excited when we're at a restaurant, you get a really big pour, but a standard glass of wine is 5 ounces. So a
Yeah.
9-ounce glass of wine is close to 2 drinks. That's your 2 drinks right there
Mhm.
for the week.
Mhm.
And so that's an interesting piece of being mindful of your portions and just take those small practical steps that will make it a little bit easier. We can't do things all or none, but small steps help.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen friends in my social circles who thrive when they experiment with these small shifts. And, like you and I just talked about, Sheila, like there is definitely a lot more of a conversation about choosing not to drink alcohol or cutting down on alcohol so it doesn't feel as daunting. And a lot of times, and certainly myself included, with being able, like just experimenting a bit with whether I actually like even need to drink alcohol, I have certainly discovered myself that I don't miss it as much as I thought that I would.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about the updated guidance is it goes back to that whole, like, this is not a moral issue, it's a health issue. And it really invites curiosity, not shame. And it asks,
Mhm.
how often do I drink? How do I feel when I drink? How do I feel when I don't drink? What are your goals? What are your health goals? And that's something that I really work on with my patients, is not just thinking like, let's cut back, but why are you cutting back? And then how do we address those things and help you meet your goals?
Absolutely, Sheila. That's such an important and powerful piece, because high risk drinking doesn't always equal alcohol use disorder, right? It really is on a spectrum, but we do know that high risk drinking does increase the risk of developing alcohol use disorder. There is support out there. And so whether it's talking to your family doctor, leaning on a friend who's maybe been through this before, counseling or community resources like the Canadian Mental Health Association or the Canadian Centre for Substance Use and Addiction, which is where this guidance comes from, there are supports out there. And we'll put those in the show notes too.
Absolutely. And, like we said before, there's an encouraging shift that it's becoming more normal to choose not to drink. Socially, we're seeing more openness, more non-alcoholic options, fewer raised eyebrows when someone says no thanks. And I think that we're having these public conversations is huge progress.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think the most important thing here for us is that this is a health issue, not a moral one. And so us as physicians, when I talk to patients, when I ask them about substances, I always preamble with it. It's like, there's no judgment here. It's more just so that I can help address your health needs in the best way that I can. And so whether your goal is better sleep, more energy, lowering your long-term risk of things like heart disease and different cancers, it's just about being informed and then aligning those choices with whatever your health goals are. And also knowing that opting out of alcohol is actually much more accepted and much more supported. I don't know what you've noticed, Sheila, in your friend circles, but I certainly have noticed myself that it's much more, I'm noticing much more people just say, oh, I don't drink, or I don't want to drink today. And honestly, like no one even bats an eyelash. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like what else can I get you? Or what else are you going to order? Have you noticed that as well in your friend circles?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're all in perimenopause, so it's definitely what I'm noticing, because we're really feeling the effect, because hot flashes are worse and everything else gets worse. So with alcohol, so it's just sort of like an automatic that's not happening today, and it's really helpful, because then there is that decreased pressure to have that drink.
Absolutely. Okay, so time for our favorite way to wrap up our episode, the true or false segment.
Okay, so first one, true or false, alcohol in moderation, like a glass of wine a day, is good for your heart.
So this one is false. And that is something I think like that you and I have heard probably throughout most of our lives, this idea that having like a glass of red wine a day is good for your heart health. But this idea actually came from older studies. Newer, higher quality research actually shows that the risks outweigh any potential benefit that may have been there in the older studies. And so that one is definitely false. So next one for you, Sheila, true or false? 2 drinks per week is the safe limit.
So this is false. There's truly no safe limit or level. 2 drinks per week is considered to be low risk, but not risk-free. Okay, Shaz. So here's one for you. True or false? Alcohol is linked to more than 7,000 deaths in Canada each year.
So it is absolutely true. And so that number includes things like cancers, cardiovascular disease, injuries, and many other things as well. And so it is a major public health issue. Like we talked about, this is not a moral issue. This is a health issue. And last one for you, Sheila, true or false? Alcohol helps you sleep.
So we talked about this, and this is false. So it may help you fall asleep faster, but it disrupts your deep restorative sleep. So it may leave you more tired the next day. So despite it helping you feel a little sleepy, it's not good for your sleep.
So today we had 1 true, 3 falses, which really shows how many myths about alcohol are still out there. So what's the takeaway? Even small reductions in alcohol can improve your health. There's, of course, no pressure to be perfect. It's all about informed decision and finding whatever balance works for you.
Yeah, and it's really all about giving yourself a bit of permission to pause and ask and reflect upon your alcohol use and like what's serving me right now and what are my health goals. And that reflection can make all the difference.
Okay, so Sheila, as we always end off our episodes, we leave our listeners with a prescription. So what is your prescription for our listeners today?
Well, I think it's just that, take a moment to pause and reflect. What are my goals? What are my health goals? Do I want to sleep better? Do I want to feel better in the morning? Do I want to reduce my risk of cancer? Think about those things and figure out where you want to sit on that continuum and then choose where that is. And that can change all the time. This, again, is not a moral issue. This is a health issue. And please take that moment to reflect and make those small changes that make a big impact on your health in the long run.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. You can find us on social media at the Doc Talk Pod, and of course, send us your questions for future episodes.
And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and a special thanks to our producer, Drew, for being our giving our listener questioner of the week. A reminder that the Doc Talk is for general information purposes only. This podcast is not intended to replace medical advice from your doctor. While we are doctors, we are not your doctor. Always speak to your own healthcare provider for questions related to your personal health needs. And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at the Doc Talk Pod and send us your questions.